Hi everyone, so we're going to look at standard deviation and we're going to try and make a map, a Choropleth map, and we're going to focus on the Highlands of Scotland. Okay, so here's the map of the Highlands of Scotland. It's on page 279 in your textbook, and we're going to use it to do some mapping, and also we're going to work out some standard deviation. And this is the sort of map that we are going to make. So here's the data that we're going to use. It's on page 278 of the book. And you can see for each district that's shown on the map, you've got some data for population density. And then you've got this other information which has been worked out from the population density. So from the bottom of the table, we can see that n equals 8. N is just the number of data sets that we've got there. And the first thing we want to do is to work out the mean. So in order to do that, we need to add up all of the population density information. That gives us 99.6. That's the sum of that x column. It's 99.6. And we need to divide 99.6 by 8. So what that's going to give us is a total of 12.5. So that becomes our mean of the whole data set. So our 12.45 becomes a really important figure because that's how we're going to work out the other values. So we're going to use that number now of 12.45, and we're going to subtract that, the first value of 30.6. That should give us 18.15. So this column in the middle, x minus the mean of x, is going to give us some values. You've got some missing values to fit in. And once you've done those, the last bit on the table of data is you need to work out the squared values of all of those. And once we've got the squared values, we can run it through the standard deviation equation. Okay, so there we go. So standard deviation is really just a way of seeing how much the values are deviating from the mean value. So we can see in the middle there, we've got the mean, 12.45, and what we can do is we can work out where all the other values sit in relation to that. Okay, so here we go. So here's another look of the standard deviation. So it looks a bit like one of these bell curves. And it says there, standard deviation is a value showing how far your data varies from the mean. So in the middle, we've got the 12.45, which we know is the mean. So here's our standard deviation equation. So we bring in the figure that we worked out from the data table, adding up all that and squaring those different values. It should come out to a total of 814.74. We know n is 8, so we can now work out that equation. So it should give you this value of 101.84, which, and if you do the square root, you should end up with standard deviation of 10.09. That's one standard deviation is 10.09. And we can show that on our standard deviation curve. So one standard deviation means you can go above or below the mean by that amount. 10.09 is one standard deviation away from the mean. Two standard deviations away from the mean is double that amount. So then for the map that we're going to create, it's one of these Choropleth maps showing population density. So we've got our figures, we know what the mean is, we know what the standard deviation is. So for each of our locations, we need to come up with a key. So we could think, well, what's one standard deviation and over? What's between the mean and one standard deviation? What's between the mean and minus one standard deviation? And what's below one standard deviation? So for each of those locations, we can work out where they would sit on that map. And based on that key we've just had a look at, here's how we would show them on the map. So Nairn and Inverness come out as the highest. Those are above 1 standard deviation. Caithness comes out to between the mean and 1 standard deviation. Ross, Badenoch and Skye and Lochaber come out as between the mean and -1 standard deviation, and Sutherland comes out at under -1 standard deviation. So this is the key that we've chosen for our Choropleth map, and it's just a simple monochrome shading, so we haven't had to use any colours, but we're going for the areas of the higher population density, those where it's 1 standard deviation, above 1 standard deviation and over, as the darker shading. And there's our list of places number coded to say how they're going to fit in to our key and colouring. So here's our completed map with the shading, and we can see that the areas of the darker shading there are Nairn and Inverness. Sutherland has the lowest values, and then we've got the other counties being shown.